Daedalus is a brilliant architect and inventor, trapped alongside his young son, Icarus, in a high tower on the island of Crete. King Minos refuses to let them leave, keeping the engineer confined so he can weaponize his genius to build up the royal army and navy. Inside the tower, the father and son have every physical comfort they could ask for, but the psychological toll is heavy. They are absolute prisoners, with zero autonomy over their own lives. Look at this tactical map of Crete. If Daedalus and Icarus managed to slip out of the tower and steal a boat, they would immediately hit this grid. The overlapping patrol routes of the king's navy form a mathematically impenetrable blockade around the entire coast. The two prisoners want out, but for very different reasons. Daedalus thinks strategically, longing to return to his homeland of Athens. Icarus barely remembers the city. His longing is entirely emotional. He just wants to run and play outside the stone walls. Daedalus quickly realizes that any traditional horizontal escape vector, whether over land or across the Mediterranean, has a 0% probability of success. Every route leads to capture. When an intellectual is boxed in by an insurmountable two-dimensional barrier, the only logical countermove is to redefine the playing field. Daedalus looks out the window, observing the open space above, and decides to move their escape route into the third dimension, the sky. Daedalus initiates a covert operation. He tells King Minos he requires feathers, thread, and wax for a brand new military invention. The king delivers the supplies, handing over the exact organic materials needed to build an escape vehicle. This schematic breaks down the construction. Daedalus lines up small and long feathers to engineer an aerodynamic curve, binding them with thread and wax. While Daedalus works with precision, Icarus plays with the wax like a child, not realizing it is a critical structural vulnerability. These wings are not magic. They are a brittle, desperate technological prototype. Their survival relies entirely on the pilots strictly adhering to the operational parameters. Over the next few days, Daedalus and Icarus conduct hover tests inside the tower. Father and son both successfully master the basic mechanical inputs of artificial flight. This cross-section maps their only viable route. They must fly the middle path, a tight corridor between the ocean and upper atmosphere. Drifting to the lower boundary introduces moisture, causing a catastrophic sink. Drifting to the upper boundary introduces thermal overload, melting the wax bindings. They step out onto the stone battlements and commit. They drop into the air, plummeting rapidly down the tower wall until their wings snap open, violently catching the air just above the Mediterranean. Getting into the air proves the technology works, but surviving the journey ahead demands absolute discipline. Out over the open sea, Icarus experiences a rapid psychological shift. His initial absolute terror gives way to awe as he swoops up and down with the seagulls and realizes he has mastered the mechanics of flight. Then he encounters a chaotic environmental variable. His wings catch a warm thermal updraft. The physical exertion of flapping drops to zero, and soaring upward becomes entirely effortless and exhilarating. Icarus looks down at the water. The massive warships of King Minos, the very things that kept him locked away in a tower for years, now look like completely insignificant specks. The pilot becomes intoxicated by his newfound godlike power. He is floating so high above the world that he actively ignores his father, who is shouting frantically from behind for him to return to the flight corridor. Experiencing absolute freedom without the foundation of discipline quickly creates a lethal illusion of invincibility. Icarus breaks formation. He points his wings directly at the sun and intentionally ascends, violating the upper threshold limit his father warned him about. The system suffers a rapid, cascading chain reaction of structural failure. The thermal limit is breached, the wax melts, and the aerodynamic curve disintegrates as individual feathers scatter into the wind. There is a horrifying moment of weightlessness. The technology completely fails, and gravity violently reasserts its dominance over the pilot. Down he plunges into the sea. Daedalus completes the impossible escape to Athens. but he is forced to endure the agonizing reality of surviving alone. Human ingenuity allows us to invent technologies that conquer nearly any physical barrier. But those exact same tools will ultimately destroy us if we lack the wisdom to respect our own limits.